Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Smarmy Grin podcast, episode number 7. Today, September 17th, 2017. Beautiful day today, a little bit dry here in Central Florida. No rain to be seen, thank God. We don't need that after that whole event we had last week. On tonight's podcast, I'll be talking about my experience through Hurricane Irma last week, which oddly enough happened on September 11th when it touched down here in Central Florida. So I'm going to be talking about my experience, what I went through that night. So you guys, for all of you guys that have never been through a hurricane, I'll just give you a little bit of a glimpse, a little bit of an insight. And so you can basically get a look of how it feels to go through one of these things. And I'm going to talk a little bit about sports. Touch on that a little bit of the NFL, and also boxing. Touch on the Golovkin-Canelo fight. It's probably going to have to be one of the best fights of the year. And on the vent section, the venting, the bitching, the moaning section, the segment that I usually leave for last. Not really a venting kind of segment tonight. I'm just going to talk about USA for Africa, the music video that came out, 33 years ago. So I'm just going to talk about that a little bit because I was watching that last night and just was thinking about a lot of things about when I was a kid, when I first saw that particular video. And I found it on YouTube again last night, and it just brought back a lot of different emotions. So that's going to be my vent section. I'm going to keep it a little bit lighthearted on the vent section. I'm not going to bitch or moan or anything like that. So I hope you guys are having a great weekend. I'm having a great weekend. And it's beautiful compared to how it was last week. Where do I start? Okay, I'll start off. Let's go back to that last Sunday, which was the 10th, September 10th. So as you guys are well aware of, if you don't live in Florida, if you do live in Florida, you're well aware of this Hurricane Irma that hit us and it hit the Caribbean. Probably one of the most destructive hurricanes that I've ever been through. And probably one of the most destructive hurricanes that has ever impacted the Caribbean. It's definitely going to go down as the storm of the century. From all the devastation that I've been seeing, it's definitely going to be the storm of the century. A Category 5 with sustained winds at 182, between 182 and 185 when it hit the Caribbean, when it hit Barbuda, St. Martin, and those other smaller islands. St. Thomas, I believe, areas in Puerto Rico, Cuba, and finally making its way here to the U.S. When it hit South Florida, the Florida Keys, all of South Florida, and made a second landing on Florida that Sunday afternoon in Fort Myers, Naples area. So I was well up to date that Sunday when it comes to this hurricane. All of us here in Central Florida, we've been prepping. We were prepping for a whole week. The Sunday before the 10th, which would have been the 3rd, Sunday the 3rd, 2017, that weekend, Governor Rick Scott came out and enacted a state of emergency on the state of Florida. I thought that was the right thing to do. I got to give him all the credit. He did a great job by doing that. I think he and his office saw what happened with Houston and Hurricane Harvey, and seeing how big this storm was going to be and how powerful this storm was going to be, they enacted a state of an emergency a week prior. So I'm glad they did that because it got everybody ready down south. It got everybody prepared down there in South Florida and in the Florida Keys. It gave people down there enough time just to get the hell out of South Florida and the Florida Keys. My family left the Florida Keys. They have a home down in the lower Keys. So I was happy to hear that. I think this was Monday. I was happy to hear that they were on their way here to Central Florida. So this was the most unpredictable, the most dangerous hurricane that I've ever been involved in, because one way or another we were all involved in this. Definitely by far it has got to be one of the most destructive hurricanes, if not the most destructive hurricanes. That's a hurricane that's ever gone through Florida. Besides, I'm assuming Andrew still holds that trophy, but I'm pretty sure that when it's all said and done, Irma is going to surpass Andrew. So this is, I'm going to give you play-by-play on what happened to me and my friends and my family. So we had a whole week to prepare. We prepared. Everybody here in Central Florida, I'm assuming it was the same way in South Florida and the rest of Florida, very civil. People were very civil. You went out to the stores, you bought your supplies. Everybody knew that you had to deal with lines and things like that. But for the most part, people were very civil. I ended up buying a few supplies. I couldn't find other stuff that I needed to buy because the shelves were empty. Everything was just going. By the time they unloaded a truck, within like an hour, it was already gone. Lines were just all around the building. But everyone was civil as Florida. I was really proud of my fellow Floridians. They did a great job as far as just being civil and just being orderly. So, and I think that's a lesson that we all learned from Hurricane Charlie and Francis and all those 4 hurricanes that we got into in 2004, that we were impacted in 2004. So everybody did a great job. I had everything as far as the supplies that I needed. I had everything basically taken care of midweek that Wednesday. So it was just a matter of time. It was just a wait game for all of us. So that Friday going into Saturday, it hit the Florida Keys. Devastated that whole area. This Hurricane Irma. After it left the Florida Keys in South Florida, it hit Fort Myers and Naples that Sunday afternoon, the 10th. I was sitting at home the whole weekend watching the forecast, watching the local guys here, the CBS affiliate. And so I was glued to that TV all day long, all weekend long. Again, credit where credit is due. The CBS affiliate called it right. They said that if once after this thing had hit from Fort Myers, if it slowed down another 5 miles, meaning if it would have reduced its speeds between, and if it would have been moving between 6 miles an hour to 9 miles an hour, that this thing had a good chance of wobbling, meaning that it was going to change its direction after it hit Fort Myers and coming into land, which it did. Up to that point, we were all made aware that this hurricane was going to go up the west coast. And in Central Florida, parts of Central Florida, we were going to get tropical storm winds. Now keep in mind that earlier in the week, after it left, after it hit Puerto Rico, a lot of forecasters didn't know where this thing was going to go. They knew that it was going to go to Fort Myers, but after Fort Myers, they didn't know if it was going to go up the spine of Florida or if it's going to go head out to the east coast of Florida and go up that way. So by midweek, we all thought that this thing was going to go up the east coast of Florida, which that was the original forecast. But then like 24 hours later, they were saying it's going to go up the spine. And finally that weekend, nope, it's going to go up the west coast. So at the last minute on Sunday, late Sunday afternoon, early evening Sunday, our CBS affiliate here tells us that the worst, what they feared the worst for our area in Central Florida was coming true. Meaning that this thing, after hitting Fort Myers, changed its path and it started going northeast. But it was going to stay on that northern path, meaning it was going to go up the spine of Florida. And that's what ended up doing. That's what this thing ended up doing. So by, I want to say around between 7 and 9 o'clock, that's when we found out. And I have to be honest with you folks, I was extremely concerned and worried at this point now, because I didn't want this thing, the eye wall of this thing, to come close to me. Because I live here close to Orlando, and a lot of my friends and family members live in this area. So we were all concerned that this thing was going to come this way now. So for that whole, I mean, it just completely changed the mood of everybody that I spoke to that night. It changed my mood from a celebratory mood that it was going to go east to now a worrisome mood that now is going basically coming straight for us. So that's what ended up happening. That whole Sunday afternoon, the outer bands of this tornado, the outer bands of this tornado, oh my God, not the tornado, but the hurricane. The outer bands of this hurricane, the northeast eastern quadrant of this hurricane was hitting the east coast. And you never want to be on that side of a hurricane, because a lot of that side of any hurricane, the northeast east side of any hurricane, that's where you get a lot of the tornadoes. That's where the worst of the weather is going to be. So you get a lot of these hopping tornadoes, as they call them, meaning small burst tornadoes, F1, F0 tornadoes. They touch down quickly and quickly just fade out. And they go from one place to another, damaging everything that's in its path. So that's what it ended up happening, and that's what we were dealing with that Sunday evening. So we started to get the first outer bands of this thing between 7 and 9 o'clock. Slowly, as the hours went by, this hurricane got more intense because it was getting closer and closer to Central Florida. We finally got the worst of it around right after 11. So from 11 till 6 in the morning, we got the worst of this hurricane. And what made this hurricane so bad was the fact that this thing was moving so slow up our state. It basically took 2 days for this thing to leave our state. And we're not talking about a hurricane like Francis, which did the same thing, but actually Hurricane Francis, when it hit Florida, it was already a tropical storm, and it was a full weekend of tropical storm winds. It wasn't really that bad. It was actually a walk in the park. It was just a boring weekend because the state had a all-out weekend curfew, so it was pretty boring. So, but Francis was a massive hurricane. It was the size of Irma, basically. But once it got close to Florida, it stalled, and then it became a tropical storm, and then a tropical depression. Thank God for that, because that was after Charlie. And Charlie had devastated our area. It devastated Port Charlotte. That's where it came in, and then basically cut across and went up the I-4 corridor. And so this Hurricane Irma basically did the same thing. It came in, it first landed in Fort Myers, which is south of Port Charlotte. So again, that area got hit with a major hurricane. So we started to get the worst of this hurricane between 11 and 6 o'clock, and I have to tell you, it was quite scary. It really was. As soon as the forecaster said that it was coming our way, I was extremely concerned, and extremely worried. So I was worried that my house was going to be blown away. I was worried for objects crashing through my sliding glass door. I could not find any plywood whatsoever that would cover my sliding glass door because, first of all the stores, the Home Depots and those were out of it. Second, I have an oversized sliding glass door, and I would have needed 2 panels of plywood to cover it, and I couldn't find anything. Needless to say, I ended up using my futon. And now looking back, I don't feel bad because I spoke to one of my coworkers and he had the same experience and he couldn't find any plywood. So he ended up using his ping pong table to cover his sliding door. But as the hours rolled by, this thing became more aggressive. And these hurricanes are weird because you'll have one outer band roll through with a high gust of wind, and there's a break in between that and the next gust, and then the next gust or the next band is not going to be as explosive as the one before it or the one after it. So basically these bands, kind of outer bands, fluctuate. What concerned me the most is that my whole area was under a tornado watch or warning for 8 hours. Actually, I would have to say almost 12 hours. And seeing what had happened in the East Coast, in the Palm Bay, Melbourne area, with all these tornadoes that landed, I was extremely worried that was going to happen in my area because we were under a tornado watch and then a tornado warning. So when these hurricanes roll through Florida, I'm extremely worried, more so about the tornadoes than the wind of the hurricane itself. So that was very concerning. So I was worrying about that all night long. I couldn't get any sleep. I maybe got like 3 hours of sleep, and that was like later on towards the night, like I want to say 4 o'clock in the morning. But if you've never been in a hurricane, the only way that I can describe it is being in a plane at takeoff, as the plane is hauling butt down the strip. You're sinking into your seat. You're looking out the window, and then you see everything flying by you. You feel the vibration of the plane. You feel the vibration of the wings. And this is how being in a hurricane, a major, massive hurricane, is like. You're looking outside the window, and you're seeing the reflection of the rain just passing by you at, high rates of speed. And at the worst part of this hurricane, between 3 and 6 in the morning, that's when we got the outer eye wall. That's when you started. It actually started before that, because we were getting gusts in the 80 mile an hour. We had 80 mile an hour gust, 90 mile an hour gust, 100 mile an hour gusts. All these outer bands are producing this. So you could feel the roof of your house just shaking, the wind howling, your house vibrating, and you're basically sunk in your chair because you're wondering what's going to happen. Is my roof going to be torn off? Is it going to be blown away? Is there going to be some kind of object that's going to go through my sliding door, glass door? What's going to happen? And I honestly thought that between the worst of it, I was not going to have a roof left over my house. That's how bad it was. And I was constantly looking outside the window, and that's something stupid you're not supposed to do. But where my house is positioned, I'm positioned really well where there's a lot of houses around me. So a lot of these houses were blocking a lot of objects hitting my house, and the wind as well, blocking some wind. So I was looking outside, and I could see the top of the oak trees, and behind me just dancing all over the place. It looked like a Broadway musical up there. Palm trees bent over, a lot of them basically touching the floor. And then as I'm seeing all this violence from these winds, out of the corner of my eye, out of the right corner of my eye, I see like this ball like just flying in front of me, and I'm like, what the heck is that? And I just started laughing. Because it was my beach ball, and I haven't seen that thing in 6 months. Apparently this thing was embedded in one of the bushes for that long, and the wind just basically dragged it out of that bush. And throughout the night, every single time that I peeked outside, this beach ball was basically bouncing from one end of my backyard to the other end of my backyard. And that kind of made me, it put me at ease for the rest of the night, because that was so funny. I thought that was comical. So that was the funniest thing of my night. And another funny thing as far as my night was getting a text from my friend, and he was just we were just being silly back and forth. So anyways, so that was what was going on in my worries as far as what was going to happen here. Luckily, I didn't lose power throughout the hurricane. I lost it after the hurricane went through and we started getting the tropical storm winds. And this was like around 8 o'clock in the morning. So I figured if my electricity made it through the whole night, then chances are it's going to make it. And I hate the back end of these hurricanes, because that's when usually everything just goes to crap. And sure enough, I lost power right around 8 in the morning, 8:30. The two oak trees that are behind my house, one in the corner of my house and the other one on the side of my house, they took it like a champ. They're still there. No lost limbs. I spoke to them before the hurricane got here, and I spoke to my other tree at Mom's house. And I know this sounds silly, but I'm telling you, they're living, breathing things. And I've gone through this before, and every time I've had a conversation with these trees, a conversation like that, they usually make it through all right. And they take it. I think that they do listen. Trees do listen, and plants do listen, because they're living things. I know it sounds kooky, but that's what I've always done. That's what I've always done before a hurricane. So they made it. I told them, hey, listen, help me out here. You help me out, I'll help you out. Just let's stay here. Let's stay here in this thing together, and let's not cause any damages or anything like that. Hey, in desperate times, you know what they say. So that happened. So I didn't lose power at all night long. I was tuned to the TV as far as like watching the forecast and all that. And so I lost power around 8:30. I made a few podcasts to try to keep you guys updated, which I have them uploaded. And this is actually my third podcast. This is a week after the storm. I haven't really been able to do anything this week because I've just been cleaning up and working back at work, thank God. So I've just been busy this whole week, and I wanted to do a podcast in the middle of the week, but I just couldn't. So I figured today was a good day to do it. Today's Sunday, so watching football and all that, everything's basically back to normal. I haven't really kept up with football or anything like that. So we all made it, but there's still a lot of things to be done in this state. I feel for my state right now. I feel for South Florida, the Florida Keys. They got obliterated. I encourage everybody to go on weather.com and just look at the pictures of what happened here and in the Caribbean, and also go to YouTube and watch these videos of what happened here in Florida and what happened in the Caribbean. The Florida Keys, it's going to be a long time before the Florida Keys come back from all this destruction. So it's going to be a while. It's going to be a slow process, and it's sad because I've been there so many times. I have family down there, and it's a beautiful area, and it's heartbreaking seeing how bad the storm ruined this whole area. But the wildlife over there survived. The Florida deer is doing fine, and I was extremely worried about that. But as far as I'm worried about the ecosystem down there, because there's a lot of debris and all that shallow water, and it's going to take years to clean all that up. So as of right now, they're only letting the National Guard, the state, the federal government, they're only letting upper and middle Keys residents back to their property so they can assess the damages. They're not letting any of the residents of the lower Keys in right now. They probably won't up until next week, because the Army engineers and the DOT engineers, they're overseeing the 7 Mile Bridge and other bridges to make sure that they're structurally fine. So this is what's been going on down there. The National Guard is in charge in the lower Keys. They're patrolling the lower Keys. So our government has done a great job, and I have to say our governor has done a great job. Like I said before, you got to give credit to Rick Scott. He did a fantastic job getting our state ready. So my hat's off to him and his cabinet and his office. They've been doing an awesome job. And also my hat to the rest of my fellow Floridians. They've been doing a great job too. Also the first responders, and I'm not just talking about police officers, medics, and firefighters. I am talking about the utility workers, the tree trimmers that are coming down here and cleaning up our state, and our utility workers that are coming down here from other states. You guys are doing an awesome job, so thank you very much. We greatly appreciate it. You don't even know how much. I have to say that I was extremely lucky this time out. I got my power back the next day, no major damages, and so I've been doing well this whole week. There's a lot of people that are not, though. There's a lot of people that are still hurting. A lot of people that lost their homes, their possessions. A lot of people that don't have electricity. I've been through this before. When Charlie went through here, I went through 2 weeks of no electricity. So it sucks. And that was during the middle of the summer. That was August 13th. That was on a Friday. And August, if you live in Florida, that's the hottest and the most humid time of the summer. So it was awful for 2 weeks not having any electricity. So I feel for you, fellow Floridians who are dealing with that right now. But this is going to go down as one of the most destructive hurricanes here in Florida. I mean, it's already this is going to be the storm of the century. No doubt about it. There's a lot of places in Florida that are still underwater, flooded. South Florida was underwater. Places down in north of Naples, Fort Myers, that whole area, places like that that are still underwater. Bonita Springs, Hastings, Palatka, even Jacksonville was underwater. I don't know if you guys saw, but it's on YouTube. Tampa Bay, this hurricane sucked the water out of the bay. Same thing happened in Pensacola Bay. It sucked the water out of that bay. So this should tell you that this hurricane was not to be messed with. I mean, this was a major, major storm. So there's our whole state was engulfed in this thing, and our whole state was hit with this hurricane. Miami got hit with this hurricane. Tampa got hit with this hurricane. Jacksonville got hit with this hurricane. Orlando got hit with this hurricane. The Panhandle got hit with this hurricane. So a lot of damages were caused because of this hurricane. And everybody that lives in Florida, we all got hit one way or another. So kudos to the rest of my Floridians. I hope you guys are doing well. God bless y'all, and my thoughts are with you, because we've all been here before, and we'll move on, and we will get back up on our feet again. So just keep the faith, and let's rebuild Florida again, and let's also rebuild the Florida Keys, because that's such a beautiful and special area. But that was my experience through that hurricane. It was just scary, completely scary, and I hope that nobody has or ever goes through that. And wow, I'm just glad it's over with. As far as the hurricane season, it's not over with. We got 2 months left, so I'm hoping these next 2 months go by fast. I'm hoping for a cold front to come down here soon, and I'm hoping for these cold fronts just to keep coming up until next year. We here in Florida have tapped out. We don't want this crap anymore. A lot of us are probably going to go through PTSD for a while, because it was extremely stressful going through this thing before and after it, and especially during. So no doubt about it that there's a lot of people, if you lived here long enough, you're suffering through some kind of PTSD from all these storms. So it was an experience that I'll definitely never forget. But anyways, that was the week that was Irma. So that was that. So now for my next segment, I just want to talk about a little bit of sports. I haven't been keeping up with sports, just because I've been busy with all this hurricane stuff. But finally today, I sat down and watched a couple of games. It's still really weird to see the Chargers in LA. It's weird to see the Rams in LA. I have no idea why these teams keep going to LA. If we know anything from the past, we know that these teams really don't last long in LA. People in LA, just like in Florida, are transient people. So the excitement of these two franchises in LA will be there for the first couple of years. After that, it's going to go away. I could see this happening with Orlando City Soccer here in Orlando. That's going to happen. You can already see that happening. At first, everybody was excited. Then we got the franchise. And the first couple of years, yay, this is, I believe, the third year. So I give it one more year, and people are just going to start losing interest in the team. And this is going to happen in LA. So I have no idea why these teams move to LA or keep moving to LA. These franchises are not going to be there long. I can guarantee that. Just because fans in LA, for the most part, when it comes to football, professional football, they're like Florida. They're like Floridians. When it comes to NBA teams and MLS team, we're just fickle. That's it. So it was weird to see Phillip Rivers now playing in LA instead of San Diego. Personal opinion, should have never left San Diego. St. Louis should have never lost their franchise. I thought that was completely bogus, especially after winning a Super Bowl in St. Louis. So, but it is what it is. The Raiders, you guys probably know more about that than I do, but I hope that this team goes to Vegas. I would love for that franchise to stay in Oakland, but it looks like it's not going to happen. But if anywhere this team goes, I hope it goes to Vegas. I don't see what's the issue with any pro team going to Vegas. Because, I mean, people are going to be worried that it's a bad place for professional athletes, but honestly, the scrutiny is going to be more on whatever team goes to that city. So the team will be all right there. And if the Raiders go there, they're going to be fine. And I'm actually excited and happy to see Las Vegas get a professional team, and I hope it happens. And I hope that's the. It's got a nice ring to it, Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know if it makes sense, but it's cool though if it does happen. So, watched a couple of games today. I haven't really watched any NCAA. I usually do. I'm stuck to watching college football when the season rolls around, and because of this hurricane, I haven't really kept up with anything. But what I have kept on with and followed has been the Triple G Canelo fight. So I'm a huge Triple G fan. A friend of mine told me about Triple G a long time ago, about 6 years ago, and he was like, "Man, you got to keep an eye out on this kid. This kid's awesome." And my friend knows a lot about boxing, so he knows more than I do. So I just kept up with the guy, and it seems like a really good dude. And I watched just about every other fight that he's fought, and the guy has just got a power punch. He's a really good fighter, fun to watch. People love him in LA. The Latin American community down there, they've embraced him. They've adopted him. So, but it's not even about that. He's just a good dude. He's a really good guy, and he's a likable guy who has power behind those punches. So, the fight that happened last night between him and Canelo, a great fight. It went to the end, which I figured that's what was going to happen, because Canelo can take punches. He's got a good chin. I mean, all in all, the dude's Mexican, man. Those Mexican fighters can fight. Those guys are Olympic boxers. They will go all out from round one to through all the way to the last round, the 12th round. So the Mexican boxers are probably, as far as like stamina, they're just amazing athletes, incredible. And Canelo is a great fighter. He packs a really good punch, but Triple G has more power in his punch. But this thing went down to a decision, and the last judge, who basically judged for a draw, she's been a controversial judge in other fights. I don't know why they keep hiring this lady. I don't know what fight she was watching. But to me, it looked like Canelo won that fight. He was more aggressive throughout the whole fight. And from every single comment that I've been reading on YouTube and Yahoo, and you know how much I love those comment sections because they're so ridiculous. No, but seriously though, when it comes to sports though, a lot of people, even the Canelo fans, even those fans, they said that Triple G won that fight and that this lady has no credibility. She should have never been there judging this fight. And I don't know why they keep hiring this lady. If boxing wants the public and the fans to take them seriously and to respect the sport and become fans again, you have to get rid of judges like this. You cannot keep judges like that around, especially controversial judges who are always making the wrong call or calling the wrong fight, because you don't know what these people are watching. Obviously, this lady was watching a different fight. To me, it looked like Triple G won that fight. On a decision card, he won that fight. And I'm not the only one that feels like that. Sports writers feel like that. Fans feel like that. Purists of the sport feel like that. So this lady needs to be barred from judging any kind of professional events, because it's pretty plain and simple. This lady doesn't know what the heck she's doing. So it just it puzzles me why she was on that judge table or that judge board or whatever you want to call it. But why was she on there when she had so much controversy coming into the fight? So they basically stole a fight from Triple G. He's a great fighter. He won that fight. In the end, it was a draw, which is ridiculous. So you're probably going to see Triple G versus Canelo Part 2. And if it does happen, I think Triple G is going to beat him, hands down. I don't think he's going to take any chances, or he's going to take Canelo for granted. And I think he's just going to knock him out, and that's going to be over. And that's going to be the end of that fight. So whatever this lady was seeing was definitely not the same fight that the rest of us were watching or seeing. Absolutely ridiculous. I couldn't believe how she judged that fight. But what a great boxing match. A lot of people have been saying that boxing has been gone for a long time, that there really are no great fighters out there. Man, you people need to start watching boxing again. There's a lot of great young fighters out there that you guys are just not watching. There's a lot of good fighters. You got Chocolatito from Nicaragua. You have Triple G. You have Canelo. You have Mikey Garcia that's coming up. Also in the heavyweights, you got Deontay Wilder. You have the British guy. Oh my God, Joshua. I forget his first name, but that dude is a really good heavyweight boxer. He's got a big punch. He reminds me a lot of Lennox Lewis in many ways. He's got that powerful jab that Lennox Lewis had. So you guys need to start watching more boxing, man. There's a lot of great fighters that are coming up. My friend was telling me about this kid out of New York that he's been watching. He's like, man, keep an eye out on that kid because he's really good. And I've been watching a couple of his fights on YouTube, and the kid does look like a good fighter. He looks poised. He's got a good game to him. I mean, he's got a good game in him, and I can't wait to see more of him. And Bernaga, his name is Hector. I believe his first name is Hector Bernaga. No, I'm sorry, Edgar Berlanga. That's his name, Edgar Berlanga. Check that kid out on YouTube. He's a really good boxer. Up and comer. Mikey Garcia out of California. This kid is going to go places. He really is. He's a technical boxer. A lot of people will say, oh, technical boxers are boring. But if you love the technique of boxing, you're going to love this kid. You're going to love watching him box. He doesn't take chances. And he's a counterpuncher, a very smart boxer. He just beat Broner about 3 weeks ago. And he's beaten a lot of solid guys. So he's up and coming. I can't wait to see what else he's going to do. And I hope he gets to fight some really good boxers and all that. But there's a lot of great young fighters right now. I think you people are taking the sport of boxing for granted. And I think you should give it a try. And enjoy it. Just get on YouTube and start searching all these guys. Search Lomachenko. Lomachenko's a stud. That dude is doing the Matrix in the ring. Like, seriously, that dude is doing the Matrix in the ring. He's a great young fighter. He's so quick and so fast. And before you know it, he's like working on your one side of the body, and then you blink, and man, he's on your right. He is like a ghost, man. I mean, he's like one of these hopping tornadoes. He'll go from one place to another without you even seeing him. So, but he's such a good young boxer, and he's so much fun to watch. But yeah, keep an eye out on boxing, man. It's there's a lot of young boxers out there. I watch UFC and I watch boxing. I still love boxing. And so I'm excited. I was extremely excited that Canelo and Triple G were going to fight, and it finally happened, and it turned out to be a great fight. So if you guys watched it, you know what I'm talking about. So now, man, speaking of knowing what I'm talking about, which I really don't. But anyways, last night after I watched the the new season of Narcos on Netflix. Awesome show. I found USA for Africa, We Are the World music video on YouTube. And I remember when this came out, I was like 8 years old. This was 33 years ago. So I was 8 years old when this came out. I remember hearing this song at my uncle's house. My uncle used to pick me up every single weekend and take me back to his house, and so I could hang out with my cousins. And my uncle was a musician. He used to love playing his guitar. And so he would have us like sing along with him or have us sing. I never sang because I can't sing a lick and I was extremely shy, but my cousins did. But my uncle also used to play music for us as far as like his vinyl records that he had. And he had Billy Joel and all these artists from the 70s and 80s. And I remember when this song first came out, he was listening to it, and he had us listen to the song. And it's just one of those things that you never forget. You know, you're a kid and you listen to We Are the World and all that. But I was watching this video, I was watching this video last night. This is 33 years later after I first watched it. And if you go on YouTube, just YouTube this video. Because there's so many talented there's so many talented music people on this video. I mean, it's amazing. I always tell my friends and my parents, my friends and my mom and relatives, that I was extremely lucky and blessed to have grown up in the 80s. And hearing all the music from the 70s and 60s, and then growing up in that era, in that decade of the 80s, where you had so many different genres of music that came out. So I consider myself extremely blessed when it comes to that. The fact that I was there and experienced that and but I heard all that music when it first came out. And that's basically the soundtrack of my life. The 80s was the soundtrack of my life. And a lot of the early 90s too. Actually, I would say a lot of the stuff from the 90s too is part of that soundtrack. But man, you start to think, what the hell happened to music? What the hell happened to music? And this is like what I usually call the vent segment, the bitching, the moaning segment. But honestly, people, what the hell happened to music? I haven't heard anything good over the last 15 years. Anything remotely good. Can't believe I just said remotely. But anyways, when you look back at that era, from the late 60s to early 90s, that was the most innovative part of music history. In this video, if you watch it, these are all-time great music artists. You have Cyndi Lauper, which I love. Man, she was so adorable when she... I just love Cyndi Lauper. And she doesn't get a lot of credit for being a great musician. And she was just amazing. And I was watching this music video, and at one point I was watching the behind the scenes, and Steve Perry gave her such a huge compliment when she started her part of the song. And he interrupted and he was like, "Do you hear that? Do you hear that?" And he's like, "Man, it's amazing, like how, like her pitch, because it sounds like when she was singing, it sounds like three other people was singing like along with her. And it was just her doing her part." And he gave her such an awesome compliment, which I thought that was the coolest thing that I ever heard. Because Steve Perry is a hell of a singer. So I thought that was the neatest thing that I heard in that music video, or the behind the scenes of the music video. And it was so cool for Steve Perry to say something like that to Cyndi Lauper. And Cyndi Lauper just doesn't get enough credit, man. She was basically a huge part of 80s music. And then you have guys like Bruce Springsteen and Stevie Wonder singing at the same time. And that the most beautiful thing about this video is the contrast of these artists as far as like their music, their voices. Like you have this raspy musical sound coming out of Bruce Springsteen, and then you have Stevie doing his part with this angelic sound. Then you have Michael Jackson doing his part with this melodic, beautiful sound. And then you have Lionel Richie, Kenny Rogers, Ray Charles, Steve Perry, who else? Dionne Warwick. I think Hall & Oates were there, if I'm right. Paul Simon is there. Bob Dylan. You talk about, man, Bob Dylan cannot sing a lick, but man, he fits so well in that video. A lot of these music artists that were on here, they weren't great singers, but they were great songwriters. But this music video and this song meshed all their voices beautifully. And if you go back and you listen to this, and you listen to each part, you're like, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing that all these different vocals can fit in one song and just make it sound so beautiful. But it really is. It's impressive. I've never noticed that till I was watching this last night. And the coolest thing about this, as I was watching it last night, it was one of the behind the scenes parts of this music video. So all these artists out of nowhere spontaneously started singing the Banana Boat, the Harry Belafonte Banana Boat that the movie Beetlejuice made famous. And it was so cool because I think Smokey Robinson started singing it, and then everybody started singing it. So I'm going to play you a little bit of that so you can hear how cool this part of the behind the scenes is. And at one point, Stevie Wonder starts singing, and he brings his own like lyrics to the song, which is so hilarious, and I'll play that too. But let me play this real quick so you guys can hear what I'm talking about. But this is awesome. I mean, Harry Belafonte was part of this group too, and this is kind of like an homage to Harry Belafonte when Smokey Robinson started singing the Banana Boat song. Listen to this.
There was this spontaneous tribute to Harry Belafonte.
So keep listening to this because Bob Dylan's there, Bruce Springsteen's there, Kenny Rogers is there. Huey Louie was there. This is so awesome. Lionel Richie singing, Steve Perry singing. This is so spontaneous, it's awesome. I've never seen this before. Michael Jackson is singing in here. This is so great. So listen to this. Listen to Stevie. Listen what he says. Listen to that again. Listen to that again. You said Stevie Wonder basically saying, this is what he said: if you drink too much, I'll have to say you'll be driven home by me, oh Ray. That is so... Oh man, let me play it again so you guys can hear that. Come on, man. Seriously, I don't know if I want to be driven home by Stevie Wonder or Ray. Don't get me wrong; it would be fantastic to have Stevie and Ray in my car. It would be just awesome. But man, I thought that was so funny because it was spontaneous and everybody just got into it. As soon as Smokey Robinson started singing, the whole group of musicians, every single one of them was singing. And honestly, this group, USA for Africa, this was the original dream team. They really were. I mean, if you look at every single musician in this video, all of them are all-time great musicians. Great songwriters, great vocalists. I mean, just they put out probably the most beautiful music in music history. All of them are probably in the Music Hall of Fame. I mean, come on, Paul Simon's on here. Kenny Rogers. It's great. There's Kenny. Listen to Kenny. Everybody's got their own unique voice. Oh, here comes Tina. Man, my uncle used to love Tina Turner. And he used to say when I was a kid, he used to tell me, man, Tina has got the best legs in the music business. But listen to Mike. Come on, man. God, you can't, man, seriously. Tina Turner, Michael Jackson, Kenny Rogers. But yeah, my uncle, I remember my uncle telling me that so many times every time he saw a Tina Turner video. She has the best legs in the music industry. I will never forget that as long as I live. There's Dionne Warwick. Willie Nelson in the background. But man, seriously, all these people were in one room recording this. So many great musicians here. You will never ever see that again. That's why I tell my friends and my family members that, man, I was extremely blessed to have grown up in such an era. Listen to Bruce. Wow. Like, honestly, I will never hear anything like this again. Steve Perry. Fuck, man. Excuse me cursing, but man. Here comes Huey. Huey Louie. Here comes Cyndi Lauper. Damn, man. Cyndi Lauper was awesome. She's so adorable too, man. I love Cyndi Lauper. But, like, seriously, I was so blessed to have grown up in this era. I was so blessed to have grown up in the 80s and 90s. But specifically the 80s, because if you lived it, you heard everything that came out during that decade. That was the most diverse, the most musically diverse decade in the history of music. It really was. Every other week, you had something different coming out, a new sound coming out. I mean, that was basically the decade where hip hop came into the forefront. But besides hip hop, though, man, you had so many different. New wave was out, alternative rock was out, punk music, all these different genres. I mean, I don't think you'll ever again will see another decade like the 80s, man. But I'll just stop playing that. But man, just check that out. Just go on YouTube and look for USA for Africa. We Are the World, and behind the scenes video. There's a 50-minute video on there that's really good, and that's where I found the Banana Boat song. So man, anyways, I'll be saying that for the rest of my life. What a decade! But we've come to the end of our podcast, and I hope you enjoyed this hour. Thank you for listening, and just glad I'm here and survived. We were extremely lucky here in Florida. So I hope you guys have an awesome Sunday evening, and I'll come out with my next podcast in the next couple of days. So thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next time here on the Smarmy Grin podcast. See ya!